Yep,
Yes. Hey,
there we
hi,
go.
Eric.
Hi, how's it going?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm not doing pretty good.
Right,
Nice night over here.
right. Okay. So I think it's about 8 p.m. at your
Hi,
end.
how's it going?
Hi, I'm good. How are you? It's about 8
I'm not
p.m. at
doing
your
pretty
end.
good.
Right.
A little after that, yeah.
Right. Okay. So I could see that is this before we actually talk about your book, I think it would be good to say something about yourself, right? So can you tell us something about yourself and also about your writing journey so far?
Sure. Well, I've lived my whole life out here in New Jersey. Always I've been reading since I probably learned my first few words.
Uh huh.
Uh, ever since I was very young, I've always been an avid reader.
Mm-hmm.
I went through just about everything I could
Mm-hmm.
get my hands on. I think when I was 13, I actually read through all the Stephen King books at the library in about a year. So
Mm, wow.
that that took some doing, but it was very enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been working out here. I'm starting to learn how to work in a pharmacy right now, in addition
Okay.
to writing and trying to get everything going.
Mm-hmm.
I've been writing since about 4 or 5 years now. I had put out an earlier series before the book I'm working on now. I'd gone to a number of conventions and places to promote it, and now I'm working on a brand new series, and I'm hoping it's gonna do well.
Mm, right. Right. So, how many books? I mean, speaking about your books, how many books have you published till date?
To date, I've published two books. This is in the first series I worked on called The Light Rider Journals. They're
Mm-hmm.
both available on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
They're part of a larger series, or in trilogy as I had originally envisioned it,
Mm-hmm.
and right, and they were largely similar to the book I'm working on now, in that they were both urban fantasies, fantasy
Mm-hmm.
that takes place in modern times, and kind of dealt with large groups of characters that really wouldn't have interacted with each other under normal circumstances.
Yes, yes. Okay, so that is something I found very interesting about your book because so yeah, tell us about that. I mean, like, how do you manage? Because you I remember you telling me that you did not realize this until the editing process where you were editing the book, and then you realize, hey, I have these two diverse characters coming together in the book, right? So um, why do you think that? Why do you think that you unknowingly incorporated those characters in your book? And tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I've always kind of had an interest in you know groups of characters working together, because I think from a writing standpoint it opens up a lot of different avenues.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you have characters that on the surface don't look like they should get along at all, because then you get to go on that journey of getting them to relate to each other and getting them to see things from the other person's point of view, and ideally getting them to eventually work together. And I think that's always a really interesting journey to take, whether you're reading it or whether you're trying to create it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I really just end up creating these kind of groups probably for that reason, because I just love going on that journey and getting to write really from so many different viewpoints. It's not like having one central character and you have to be in that person's head all the time.
Correct.
You get to move between multiple views and really get to expand as a writer.
Right, right. So, about your first book, tell us about your first book, and tell us a little bit about how long has it been since it is published now, and how has the receptions from your fans or from the readers or the general public has been so far?
Well, I published the first book quite a while ago, back in 2012,
Mm-hmm.
and initially initially, like, I got very good feedback from people. They seemed very pleased with it. The story was about a man who
Mm-hmm.
basically gets forcibly recruited into a group of beings whose whole job is to sort of keep the balance of good and evil on Earth.
Uh-huh.
And I really tried to keep it in sort of his mindset, seeing how you take this very normal person who really doesn't think about such huge cosmic matters, and then put him right in the middle of it and see how does he adjust? Does he ever try to get out? Does he stick with it? And that was that was something I'd really kind of worked on since I was very young, and I'm still very proud of it, and I'm very glad that the people who liked it very much seem to like it. But I will admit it hasn't quite done what I was hoping it would do. So that was part of the reason I moved on to this new series for the time being.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, when you say that it doesn't turn out to be something that you expected it to be, what do you think that you would want to actually work on?
Well, honestly, working on the new series has, I think, kind of fixed a lot of or at least had me go over some of the issues I had. With the first book, I think one of the problems was I definitely had too many characters.
Okay.
I had a group of about 10 different people trying to do things, and many people said, I like the story, Eric, but it's kind of hard to focus on everybody. And in retrospect, I'm like, they had a point.
Okay. Right.
And I think it was also a little harder to classify. I was trying to do something very different because I felt at the time there were a lot of there was kind of a theme going through a lot of books especially with fantasy, and I wanted to try to do something different. And again, I'm very glad I did it because I think it taught me a lot of things that helped with this new series. But there are definitely things I wish I could have done a little differently with it, but I'm still very proud of it.
Right. So I think, okay, so when your readers have been giving you feedbacks, right? I think this is one of the most valuable feedback from beta readers that we can
Absolutely.
get, before we even publish the book. So tell us a little bit about your experience if you have worked with beta readers. Tell us a little bit about that. And I mean, do you think, I mean, for your first book, if you think that you have actually recruited beta readers earlier, do you think it would be helpful in ironing out the issues that you mentioned earlier?
It might have been. I've been able to get some very good beta readers for the new series, and I've gotten very positive feedback. Definitely helped me narrow in on areas that I could expand upon, and I do believe it's made the new book much stronger as a result.
Right. Okay.
So I would definitely recommend to anyone try to get as much feedback as you can from people because it can only help the book.
Right, exactly. So I think you learned along the process, I think you learned to actually make use of beta readers and actually get in touch with beta readers so that your new book can be better. So I think um, talk to us about your learning curve. I mean, about being a writer, but being a new writer, about being a first-time writer, and first-time publishing your book, putting your book out there, on Amazon for everybody to see and write. So, walk us through your journey of, writing a first book. What was the hurdles? What was the challenges?
Well, I think obviously the first hurdle and challenge you always have is actually writing the book and taking whatever idea you have in your head and putting it down on paper.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I think the hardest thing was really deciding how do I get it out there. I had tried traditional publishing, and as many people will tell you, it's a very, very big mountain to climb. And initially, I went with a different press eventually to put my book out there, and it was on a number of avenues, but I think probably the biggest hurdle I had, and I think this is something every writer kind of realizes once the book is out there, is that you have to understand marketing. And it took me a lot. I had to kind of learn on the fly the best ways to get the book out there, and the things to do and the things not to do. And again, it's all very much a learning curve, as you said. It's all just going in and trying things and seeing what works and what doesn't, and keeping those things in mind for what you do next.
Right.
So the first book was very much as good as it was to get out there and get it done. It was definitely a lot of learning experience at the same time.
Right. So talking about publishing, so eventually, I think you found a publisher for your book, for the first book. And
Yes.
Talking about marketing, tell us a little bit about your opinion on traditional publishing as I mean versus self-publishing, and like, what do you understand? I mean, along the journey, I mean, you've come so far. So what do you think about traditional publishing, and what do you think about self-publishing? Right.
Well, I can say that, as I said, traditional publishing is definitely not the easiest route to go. It's a lot of sending out, putting yourself out there. It's a lot of looking for people who will, hopefully have an interest in your book, and oftentimes waiting a very long time only to unfortunately hear they're not interested.
Right.
So, whereas at the inverse, I think with self-publishing and indie and being more of an indie author, it's very much more of a community. When you're doing it traditionally, you're very much on your own. You're looking really doing all the work yourself, and you have to kind of go by trial and error.
Correct.
Whereas I think with self-publishing and indie publishing, it's more of a community effort. I've had many positive experiences with other writers who are in the same boat as I, just trying to find the right platform for our books and find the right things to do to make them available to the people. And having that community is a huge asset to anyone doing it. And obviously, I think everyone does have to try their own thing and really figure it out for themselves. But that said, I do think if you're really trying to figure things out for yourself and you want kind of a better way to sort of hear from other people and listen to what they're doing, I kind of do feel indie publishing or self-publishing is a better option in that sense.
Right, because
It's
along the way, I think you will learn a lot more, and I think you will be able to have that control over your book and how you market it and how you market yourself,
absolutely.
right? How you brand yourself as an author. Because I think being an indie author is more like being an entrepreneur. Like you have to think like a business person. You have to think like an entrepreneur, because you want to put your book out there and you want to sell the books off. You want to make profit out of it, right? So end of the day, I think indie publishing actually teaches so many writers out there to actually be kind of a small business owner by writing books. So in that sense, when it comes to marketing, what do you think the traditional publishers are doing to help you to put your book out there?
Well, from a traditional standpoint, I mean, obviously, you look at somebody like, say, Doubleday or Penguin Press. They have the name, they have all the connections, they have a lot to really help push you. But again, you, as you said, you don't have as much control over it. The publishers certainly do have a certain degree of control over the book that you have much more of as an indie author. And it's very much a sense of like you get more you have more avenues open to you, I think, but you kind of have less control how you walk down them, I'd say.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. I think coming to indie publishing, I think a lot of people, they opt for indie publishing or probably self-publishing is because of that entire control on their work that they get at the end of the day. Because I think when you go for traditional publishing, you might have that a little bit of assistance, from the publishers, but I think you lose control over your work over the day, right? So I hear this a lot from authors, because I have been dealing with a lot of authors who are coming to
Of
me
course.
for marketing purposes and stuff like that. So being a new author myself, I know how difficult it is to actually put your work out there. So yeah, coming to your book, because I remember you saying that one of your readers, I'm not quite sure, but I remember you saying that someone said you have written a character that Danny Trejo can actually play in movies. So
Yes. Well, that was actually one of the one of the beta readers I had. I had my new book deals a lot with mythology and
right.
in the modern world, and he was a very big fan of that. So I said to him, would you like to read the book and give me your input? And he was very happy to do so. He read the book. It took him a little while, but he was very consistent. And at one point, I asked him, "So how are you doing with it?" And he said, "Oh, I'm really enjoying it. It's moving really well. I think you've got a really good book here, and I love this one character." And I said, "Oh, really? Why do you like him so much?" And he says, "Well, he's funny. He's got a really great wit about him, and every time I read his dialogue, I imagine Danny Trejo in my head just saying everything." And I thought to myself, "My God, I've written a character for Machete. I'm done now. I have accomplished my goal in life."
Right. I mean that's a huge a huge compliment coming from a beta reader, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
I understood that he is a fan of American Gods, like, right?
Yes.
And
That was one of the reasons I went to him.
okay, right. So I think end of the day, I think you've already achieved your sort of a goal, right? Because I think you also liked to read American Gods, and I think a lot of your I mean, you probably got your inspiration from American Gods. I think so. End of the, tell us about how do you draw your inspiration for your books and for your characters?
Well, I honestly try to get ideas from the things I read and things
Mhm.
around me. One of the good things I have is that my job has me work with people a lot, so I get to observe a lot of personalities. I get to see how people interact with each other.
Uh-huh.
For the new book specifically, I really came up with the idea after reading American Gods on vacation because I loved how well that book really brought all these classic characters of mythology into the modern world, and I thought I want to do something like this.
Uh-huh.
And for obviously I couldn't just do everything the book did because I thought, well, Neil Gaiman can probably afford better lawyers than I can, so it's probably not a good idea. But at the same time, I did look at the book and think, okay, what ideas can I sort of work with here? What can I change?
Mm-hmm.
One very big thing I changed from the book was, there were again, like in my story, there were a number of characters in it, and they weren't always as present, but they were definitely there. And I thought, well, I've written this book with a large cast. I don't think that's as good an idea for me to try again. So, I took instead of doing that, I took
Mm-hmm.
a much smaller cast, about 5 major characters, and was able to focus more on them and give them much more depth than I think I had been able to give my cast in the past. So that was a very important thing I got from the book. And also I think just a lot of some of the mechanics of how that would work. When you have my book is really about as I said, gods and mythological beings living in the modern world. So his book was American Gods was a great blueprint for how would those characters actually function. And I didn't do it exactly the way Neil Gaiman did it, but I definitely played with the ideas he had and reshape them into something I could do.
Ah, right. So, uh, I mean, something that really struck my mind just now when you were talking about your characterizations of the book, of those characters, and also your book in general, right? I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking, I mean, like coming to fantasy books, what we used to see is that normally it is very long, or probably it will
Right.
come in prequels or sequels, right? So, um, in your opinion, should a fantasy book be, what kind of length that you think it is ideal for one book?
Well, that's a hard one. I think it really depends on the story.
Huh?
If you're trying to write more like someone like Tolkien, for example, and you really feel you want to tell this big epic story, then
Correct.
you probably have to write a much longer book and really get that sense of epicness and legend into it. But if you want to tell sort of a bit of a simpler story, then I think you probably don't need to go for 800 pages,
Correct.
because by that point you're probably going to wear the story out. So I think
Mhm.
it really depends on the story you want to tell, and how well how much you need to really tell it well.
Uh-huh. Right. So, how long is your book? I mean, your first book.
Um, well, my book after the edits I've done is about 280 pages.
Okay.
It's not, I figure, fairly easily digestible.
Correct.
And, I've actually been working on another book in that series, which is, which is longer. But again, that's sort of the length I felt that worked for the story. It wasn't, it was just long enough where everything was said well and, done well and didn't feel excessive.
Right. So, because you actually joined us for the April group author interview, right? So I think,
Right.
I first of all, I have to thank you for joining us, and I think it was
Oh, happy to do it.
and really fun to have you and also the other 11 authors with us, because I think the support was amazing from the fantasy and sci-fi authors, right? So
I'm glad to hear that.
I did remember asking all of you that on the kind of inventions that you write that could feasibly be science fact. What kind of inventions do you write that could be feasibly be science fact? So so tell us a little bit about that. I mean, your book is more towards fantasy and mythology, right? So
Right.
you have a lot of magics, I guess, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So how do you actually go about developing that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, for this book, as I said, I drew a lot from mythology and sort of established stories. So I definitely had a bit of a sort of a established field to draw from. For
Uh,
example, one of the myths I drew from was Norse mythology.
uh-huh,
So when I was writing for that specific character, I thought to myself, like, okay, what kind of things can he have that make sense for him? So I get, for example, one of the major things he has is he has a container of ale that from Valhalla that will never go dry no matter how much he drinks from it. So I thought, like, okay, a Viking god would have that. I think that would be good for them. And in other cases, it was trying to really sort of like draw from mythology in a way that felt appropriate, because some of the characters I worked with weren't as well defined in the myths, and so I kind of had to think about what they were like and how they were described and build a backstory for them.
uh-huh,
So
right.
I have one god who has a sort of who has old totems in her office that are that are hidden away. Another one who just dresses a certain way because of her culture and
Uh-huh,
belief system. So from there it was really just kind of continuing along those lines and trying to make sure it was something that felt appropriate to the myth, or if it was something I could use from the myth, doing that as accurately as I could. So it's
uh-huh.
very much sort of examining and building or replicating as needed.
Right. So, one of the answers for your for the interview question is that you said you used a hammer to control the earth because you think it is easier to imagine it breaking the ground apart, right?
Right. Yeah,
So,
that was something that,
yeah, tell
oh,
us
sorry.
about the choice. Tell us about the choice of you choosing. I mean, your choice of weapons actually.
Ah, well, with the weapons, it was again trying to think of how they would be used in conjunction with the elements, because that was the kind of because that was part of the story I was working on at the time.
Uh-huh.
And I thought to myself, okay, I need a weapon that can be associated with the earth or could be used in that way.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's a rock, it's hard. What do you do? What can you do with that? And I thought, you hammer with it. So
Mhm.
for that one, a hammer made perfect sense.
Uh-huh.
And in another case, I was working with a character who had control of the forest, and I was trying to think, like, what can I do? I thought, well, I could do a staff, but that seems kind of obvious.
Mhm.
And then I thought an axe, because one of the weapons you do associate with sort of the woods and trees is an axe, because
Mhm.
that made perfect sense for that character.
Correct. Correct.
And from there it was really just sort of that sense of functionality. Like, if you could actually control this particular element, what weapon would make sense for you?
Mhm. Mhm.
So that was always so ironically, logic kind of played a part in creating these fantasy weapons.
Uh-huh. Right, right. So, um, coming back to the part of actually putting your book out there, now you have two books out there, right? You've published two
Right.
books out there. So, um, how do you actually go about marketing your book, and what have you learned so far, and how do you engage with your readers? How have you been engaging with your readers so far?
Well, the main contact I've had with my readers has been at the conventions I've gone to,
Uh-huh.
and it's been a very interesting experience because I get to you get to really meet people from all walks. Everyone that you could think of to meet is usually at one of these conventions, and the people who have been good enough to come up to me and show interest in my book have been have been very interested. They always want me to tell them about the book and explain it to them, and that's been both useful as sort of a marketing tool because you do learn how to sell the book to people and
Correct.
how to like describe it to them in a way where they want to see what happens and they're willing to you know to buy the book from you.
Mhm.
Beyond that, I've mainly done work. I've tried to work, somewhat online.
Mhm.
I created a Twitter account, Facebook, all the things that
Mhm.
help you in this day and age. And I've very much learned how important those things can be
Can.
because it's really in this most people it's something you use to stay in connection with people. If you're a writer and you have these things, they're just as much a marketing tool as anything
Oh,
else you could possibly do.
right, right.
You meet you get to meet other you not only meet fans, you can meet other writers who can who can only give you more advice.
Uh-huh.
And it's again a tool I can't recommend enough for anyone out there who's looking to write and get their name out.
Right,
It's it's just incredibly vital right now.
right. So, have you ever tried using teasers with some of the excerpts from your book, like tiny ones that could pique the interest of your readers? That you just make an image, a few images out of that, and then you just publish. I mean, this is one of the things that we have been doing. I mean, for my own book, because I've co-authored a book and I've just published a book about
Oh,
1 week
congratulations.
ago. Yes, I mean, we just launched the book in an event about 1 week ago. So what I've been doing for myself is that I have been, obviously we've been leveraging the networks that we have among the three of us. We've been trying to promote that. I mean, so that is one of the advantages that we have at our end. But still, what I have been doing on the Facebook page is actually to share the excerpts of the book. Every now and then, we just make an image out of it and then we share it on the Facebook page. So I think it has been getting a lot of good receptions from those who have liked our page. So I think this is one of the tools that authors can actually use to give a glimpse probably to readers of what is actually they're going to get inside the book, or how does it actually feel to read the book, right? So
Right.
yeah, so have you done anything like that before?
Well, I'm actually working with someone right now to develop some teasers as well as a short book trailer for it. But I will say it's not quite what you described, but it does sound like a really good tool to use to give people a taste of the book.
Uh-huh.
So I definitely think that's something I'm gonna explore now. So thank you for that.
Right, because I'm just sharing with you what we have learned over the past few weeks of trying to promote our very own book, and I think it has worked quite well because I think end of the day, we can actually make book trailers. We can actually talk to the readers out there, but what they ultimately want to know is what is inside the book, right? And what they're gonna
Absolutely.
get, So I think the best way to actually put it out there is obviously book trailer is going to help, and also book teasers, because that is exactly what they're going to read. And I think as they follow you, and I think as they read a few excerpts, I think they will be able to decide if the book is for them. right? And in that
Absolutely.
sense, and I think in that sense, it avoids, probably it would only help you to attract the right readers for you, right? And I think probably you wouldn't be selling the book to the wrong, group of readers and end up having negative reviews, or probably having having readers who do not want to review at all, right? So I think these are the little things that probably indie authors can go about trying to do to promote their work. So coming to the group of authors or group of writers that you have met, right? How supportive have they been, in along your journey? And have you actually tried to exchange books with them? Have they tried to help to review your books? So tell us a little bit more about the support from the group of authors that you have met online.
Well, the support I've had has been nothing but just great.
Uh-huh.
The first one I actually had contact with was a gentleman by the name of Matt
Mhm.
Larkin, who was writing another series on Norse mythology. So that immediately grabbed my interest, number one.
Uh-huh.
And I read his book, and I was very, very impressed with it. I left a great review on his page, and then he had his an email address there. So I thought to myself, well, it can't hurt to actually send him a note and see if he has anything to respond with.
Mhm.
And he responded very quickly. He and I had a number of correspondences. He answered a lot of questions
Awesome.
that I had about the best ways to get myself out there, best things I could do with the book.
Mhm.
And he's the reason I set up a lot of the things that I have done and pushed myself the way I did.
Uh-huh.
He even helped me even suggested a really great editor for me who, helped me really hammer the book into shape and get it the way I needed it to. So,
Correct.
he's been nothing but a great guy. And again, if you're into mythology, just look him up on Amazon. I highly recommend him.
Right.
And actually, and even then, just the connections I've made through, as I said, through Twitter largely, but also the Facebook groups I've become part of who just like are so quick to help you out if you have a question or if you're not sure what to do about something or you want to know, hey, who's the best person I can go to for a trailer, or who can make a good cover, or what's a good place, what's a good website to sell on. They are so quick to help you, and it's just
Awesome.
it helps so much to feel like you're part of this community that's all trying to get to the same place you are.
Right.
It's so much help. I can't
Yes.
recommend it enough.
Right. Yes, exactly. So I think because I could recall right now speaking to Tracy on screen about a couple of weeks ago, and I remember her saying that she had a reader who actually it's not even a reader. I think it was a fellow writer from the US, and she's in the UK, by the way. So this person was actually was so motivating her to get her book out there, and then she was saying, "No, no, I'm not going to write, and I don't think I can do this." But eventually, I think he managed to uh, convince Tracy to get the book out there because he was very ill at that point of time, and he said, before I breathe my last, I would want to hold your book, and Tracy eventually did publish a book, and she actually posted the book to to David, and
Uh,
David actually got to read the book before he passes away. So I think that was amazing to know that people are so kind out there, right? Especially writers in helping each other to publish works, to get the word out there about our work, and I think this is really amazing. So, coming to your next book, the book that you're working on. So
right.
tell us a little bit about that. What can your current readers expect out of that book, and when are you planning to publish it? And tell us a little bit about that.
All right. Well, the book is called Silent Pantheon,
Uh-huh.
and like my last book, it deals with sort of magic in the modern world and a group of very diverse characters.
Mm-hmm.
It's 5 people who live in New York who all have, different professions, different backgrounds. If you put them up in a lineup, you would think that
Correct.
they had never met each other before,
Uh-huh.
but they do all meet, and they get to this bar and they start talking about, how things were in the old days and what's changed. And basically, you find out they're not actually people. They're actually 5 gods from 5 different mythologies and religions that are basically living on Earth because either no one believes in them anymore,
Correct.
or because they've kind of been displaced by the other religions that have cropped up over the centuries. And they're on Earth, they're doing the things that they were sort of created to do, and they're helping humanity behind the scenes and not really taking any credit for it anymore. And basically they start realizing that the end of the world may be coming, and they have to decide, do we do something about it, or do we just forget about it the way they forgot about us?
Right.
And it's definitely been a really great experience, because it's, as I said, there's definitely if you're an American Gods fan, I think you'll definitely find a lot of things to like in here. And I'm hoping to have it released this summer. I'm just trying to do the the last few steps, the last edits, the setting up my work on Amazon and other sites to get it ready to go. And I think, as I said, I think it's definitely a book that kind of goes into a lot of different things. I think hopefully people who read it might get a sense of, like, even if you if you feel like you're not where you really want to be in life, there is something else for you. And that, and the importance of kind of listening to people who are different from you, or might not, or come from different places, or see the world differently, and how important it can be to just sort of how important you can do with a group of different people that come together.
Amazing. I think you have piqued my interest, by saying that.
Good work.
You did, because the moment you said that you actually bringing 5 different characters who wouldn't meet in real life, I mean in everyday life, you're bringing them together to to have a meet up point, and they actually start talking to each other. That point of time, I felt like, oh wow, okay, how do you do that? Right? How do you make these people who in everyday lives, who wouldn't be meeting each other, how do you make them to come together to meet each other, right? And that was one thing. And the other thing is that when you said they're actually not people, but they're actually gods from different myths and different religion, I think that's like amazing to me. It sounds like, okay, wow, what are these guys trying to do now? Right? So I think you picked that, you piqued my interest, and I think it's going to be really amazing. So
I hope so.
yes. I mean, yeah. And I think personally, probably your strength would be because, when you say that you are bringing diverse characters to come together, to work together, and I think it would eventually make your readers to think, to have a open mind, to be able to accept people who are different from them, I think. So I think this is one of the good things that people can actually get from your book. So I think it's going to be amazing. So yeah. So how has it been so far? And are you complete? Are you towards completing the book at this point of time? So yeah, tell us about that. Where is
Well,
the book right now?
the book is more or less complete. There's always, like, it's always like kind of a hard thing as a writer to know when, like, you have to stop polishing it and leave it alone now. But
Yes.
it's like, as I said, right now I've just kind of been trying to build support for it before I put it out there.
Right.
And that's been that's been a lengthy process, but it's starting to show some dividends. And really, as for the book itself, I think writing it was really kind of a great experience, because I've always had a love of mythology and a love of fantasy, and getting to really kind of dive into these old stories that I spent so much time reading when I was younger. I grew up reading Greek mythology and Norse mythology, even in Egyptian mythology, and getting to go into them in more depth and explore them a little bit. That was really fun to do. And I also got to research the mythologies that I wasn't quite as familiar with, and that proved to have some interesting times to it.
Mm.
For example, at one point, I wanted to bring in, Hindu gods.
Uh-huh.
And I thought to myself, like, okay, I better do some research now because people still worship these guys. I want to get it right.
Correct.
And I started looking around and asking people I knew if they could give me any information or if they had any tips for me. And I remember one of the first things that I found out when I was reading was, well, they don't really have physical forms the way like other gods do. And I was like, say what now? They're not physical beings. How am I going to do this? And
Right.
I had to do some work to really kind of figure out how I was going to do it because I very much wanted to, explore Hinduism, and it was a challenge, and thankfully people have been receptive to the way I did it,
Uh-huh.
especially Hindu people, which was of course the goal,
Uh-huh.
and hopefully it's been, and I'm just kind of hoping that people see what I've the interpretation I've had and that I've done a good job with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been, that was one of my, that was really one of my goals, just trying to portray everything as well and as accurately as I could.
Uh-huh. Right. So, what is the key takeaway message that you would want to, your readers to actually take away from your book, from your books?
It's funny. Sometimes, when you're writing the story, you don't always think about what you're trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'm just trying to think, is this a story that's going to grab people? Is this a story that's going to entertain them? Because I
Mm-hmm.
think that's always part of the goal when you're writing. And I think sometimes I don't think I really knew what the book quite was going to say until I had actually finished it and I was going over it.
Uh-huh.
And there were a few things. As I said, I think it's about in a way that even if you're knocked down, there is always a way to get back up, and that you can. Is that again the idea of coming together and being more powerful, being more together than you are apart.
Uh-huh.
But ironically, I think if I had to really say what the big takeaway is, I think the big takeaway is it's kind of a stance on sort of ignorance in a way, because again, you have, as I said, you have these people coming together, but you also have, I think, these gods who were used to be on top of the mountain. Everybody came to them. It was great, and now they're down there. They're down on the ground with everybody else, and
Right.
being that way for so many years and seeing everything has really sort of made them reevaluate how they look at things, how they look at what they've done,
Right.
and kind of just sort of see things very differently than they would have, and look at people differently than they used to. So I think it's very much. I think if they take away from anything, it's that how important it is just to try to understand everything and how much you can learn from being among people as opposed to being apart from them. It's a lot there, I know. But
Right. So, coming to you as a person, I mean, like, first, a little more about what you do for your day job and your family, and how supportive have they been so far, and tell us a little bit about that. How does this support from your family helped you to actually set your time apart, to write or something like that? So, tell us a little bit about that.
my family's been nothing but supportive. They've always been. It was my mother who actually got me into a lot of the reading that kind of influenced me later on. They've always encouraged me. They go over it. They read the work with me, even though I'm sure there are some things I've written that they would probably never have picked up on their own. They give me they always give me feedback. They're very honest with me, and it's been just a very good supportive environment from them to help sort of think things through and figure out the best way to do it, and also just have a good space to do it in.
Mm-hmm. All right. Uh-huh. So, being a writer now, I think you've been a writer for a couple of years now, probably about 2 to 3 years, right?
At least.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So, do you foresee writing to be something that you're gonna do full time one day? So, tell us about from your perspective. Tell us about the possibility of having writing career as a full time career for
Oh,
anyone
that,
out there that wants to be, yeah.
well, I mean, that's what I'm hoping for. This has really been what I've always wanted to do, and what I kind of get the most satisfaction out of.
Awesome.
I'm certainly, I would say to anyone who wants to do it, it's a great goal to have. I can only say just be prepared for a lot of work.
Uh-huh.
Be prepared for, being able to take the criticism from people, being able to listen openly,
Right.
and really just be prepared for a haul, because it certainly is not something that happens overnight, no matter how good you are.
Yes.
And I always, it's funny, some people always do ask me, like, how well, do you think it's easy? And I say, well, I always tell them Stephen King nearly threw out his first novel because he didn't think it was good enough.
Correct.
So it's not an easy thing, and you never know how anything's going to be received unless you like do the work and just put it out there. So I always just say it's not easy, but you have to try it. It's
Yep.
the only way you can do it.
All right. Right. So what do you do for your day job, and tell us a little bit about when do you write? What is the best time of the day that you think you could write the best,
Oh,
possibly?
generally, I think for me, with my day job, I'm generally, as I said, I'm working, in a pharmacy a number of hours a day, and I find
Mhm.
after that is the best time, because by then it's like I've done the work, it's done for the day. I'm tired, and I kind of just like I want to get my head out of that for a while. So
Correct.
I find generally in the evenings is when I do the best writing, and even when I do the best editing, because it's like you don't have anything else going around, and that's where all your focus is.
Right. Awesome. Cool. So, to all your readers out there, is there anything that you want to say to them before we actually, end this conversation and this chat? What do you think that you would want to tell your readers? Where do you want them to go and look up for you? Any links, any social media links that they can actually go and look up for you? So tell us about that. So maybe someone that is right now watching us, if anyone is going to watch the replay, they could
Right.
actually look up for your books on Amazon, probably your website. Tell us about that.
Right. Well, obviously, to my readers, just thank you for reading, and thank you for all your feedback. Good, no matter what it is, that's always where that's how you learn how to be a better writer.
All right.
Where to find me? I have a website, Eric Nierstedt, author.com.
Mm-hmm.
My I'm on social media. My Facebook is again Eric Nierstedt, author on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Nierstedt Eric on Twitter, or
Mm-hmm.
at Nierstedt Eric on Twitter. I mean, and obviously look me up. I'm happy. I love talking with people about writing and where things can go. And I'm, like I said, just looking forward to hearing from you.
Awesome, awesome. Right. So, Eric, I think what we are trying to do at our end, what I'm trying to do as a publisher, because I've become a publisher here for my own book, and I'm also the distributor. So, what I'm trying to do is actually to bring books from different parts of the world to be marketed to, say, from books from the west to the east. I'm just trying to like connect people or readers and writers from different parts of the world, so that they find a pool of different markets for them to actually market the books, and for readers actually to pick up books from authors from different parts of the world. So I think this is one of the things that I've always wanted to work on, because I think one of the reasons why I am doing this, because it is often very difficult for us to connect with authors. We might end up like buying the book, reading the book, but knowing the author is just another thing, right? I mean, like
Right.
you don't really, yeah, you don't really know the author. I mean, not really on a personal level, but I mean, even on social media, I think so many famous authors out there, they are not really active on social media, and it's so damn difficult to actually look up for them on social media, and to actually learn what is what are they doing, what are the upcoming books and stuff like that. So this is why I actually started the whole thing for international book promotion. And I think this is what we've
Oh,
been working on, to interview authors like you, so many authors like you out there, to put things out there so that people can actually pick up our videos, as they are browsing YouTube, probably if they come across our video, and probably they could learn something new about authors, right? And probably pick up your books, right? So
Definitely.
this is what I am trying to achieve through video marketing. And I think video marketing is really excellent because um, you can't be like meeting every single person, face to face, right?
Definitely not.
Probably that's not possible. But I think what could be made possible is to leverage the power of video marketing, and when you tap the power of video marketing, you could probably reach more, engage with more readers, right? So this is what we are trying to do, and I think I've been absolutely very happy to connect with a lot of authors like you,
I can
and
imagine.
and I'm hoping to keep you in the loop, and hopefully, if if when things progresses, we are hoping to have your books also to be marketed in different parts of the world. So
I
yeah,
mean,
so
I would like that too.
awesome. So yeah, this is the whole idea behind it. I just wanted to let you know if you're not aware of this. So this is what we are trying to do at this point of time, and it was a pleasure talking to you, Eric. And
Likewise.
I am also in the plan of I'm having the plan to actually come up with different groups
Oh,
for in
really?
based on genres, right? So that you can group authors and readers based on genres, because I think most probably those who are going to pick up your book is definitely those who like fantasy and myths and all that kind of stuff, right? So
Oh, yeah.
I think that is where you can go and find your potential readers. So by doing this, I think we will be able to identify the correct readers, right? We will be able to connect the right readers with the
Right.
right authors. So this is how also something that I'm trying to work on. So yeah, I will definitely keep you in the loop, and hoping to see you again. And thank you
Likewise.
so much for joining us for the live interview today. And I hope I'm not very sure how many people are actually watching us live right now, but you can definitely get them to watch the replay on YouTube. It's already being recorded in YouTube for your information.
Great.
So yeah, the link will be available as soon as we stop this broadcast. So thank you for joining us today, and it was a pleasure talking to you, Eric. Have a good day.
You as well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. So speak to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night. Bye.